Hi, I'm Dan Vega. Welcome back to Tuesdays with Dan. You know, we all felt the effects of the oil spill that hit the Gulf Coast in 2010. Some of us felt the effects more than others, and we read about many things online about what happened and what didn't happen. But when we come back, we're going to talk with the man in charge, the man that was on the ground, Mayor Tony Kennon, and we're going to find out the real story, things you knew and things you didn't know. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, in 2010, we all kept being bombarded with the media about the oil spill and when they were going to get it capped. They tried everything. They couldn't get it under control. And we wanted to come down to the Gulf Coast to get the real story. My guest tonight is Mayor Tony Kennon, and he was the man on the scene. He was kind of at ground zero, you could say, where he was really gathering. He was the main resource of putting things together. I think he was actually one of the first interviews on CNN about it, and just a man that really turned things around here in the Gulf Coast. So please give a warm welcome to Mayor Tony Kennon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, Mayor, let me ask you, I know, go back to the time you get the phone call, right, and they let you know that there's been this spill. How'd you get the news?
Well, actually, I got the news from some friends of mine who were actually fishing out by the rig when it exploded. So I had pictures emailed to me the next day, I think it was, of the rig burning. It had just been put out. So we knew something was up, but BP early on led us to believe there was no big deal. It was a very short-term issue, so we pretty much all forgot about it until about the second week down the road. Right.
So initially it was like, well, they're saying it's not a big deal. Let's just keep an eye on it, but probably not going to be an issue. And so when was the first time you actually got on the ground and you actually saw the oil firsthand? And what were some of the fears that were creeping in during that time?
It was probably 6 or 8 weeks between April 20th and the time the oil first showed up, which was the first week in June. So we had a lot that went down dealing with BP, dealing with the financial issues when you were coming. You know, what happened was about the second to third week, with all the dire projections that were out there and the internet phenomena that might happen, the phones quit ringing for reservations. And then they started ringing again, except that it was with cancellations. So then we knew we were in a mess. So before the oil ever hit, we spent a bunch of time trying to get BP to the table to discuss financial issues, because they had already started their PR program of, we're going to make the Gulf Coast whole.
Wow.
But when it did hit, I don't consider myself an emotional person. I'm sort of a pragmatic kind of guy. But I was standing in the place where my dad taught me how to surf fish when I was probably 6 years old. And I never thought it would affect me that way when I looked out and saw the oil roll up on the beach, and you could see it just as far as you. It was devastating. I'll be honest with you.
The people of Orange Beach, particularly, right in the heart of things, how did they really suffer? How did Orange Beach suffer from the oil spill?
In every way you can imagine. I mean, strictly speaking, as far as economics, I mean, you lose half of your income for the year. You're in dire circumstances. But you know, we had the angst, the emotion, because again of the dire prognostications of toxic Gulf of Mexico for decades to come, a methane bubble that might explode under the well, sending a 100-foot tsunami, you know, where we're going to have to evacuate the island. You know, so everybody has their livelihood wrapped up in their property, their businesses. It was devastating. No one knew what to expect, and that went on for almost 100 days. What I realized early on was BP was a bully. And they came to town and essentially kicked us a bunch of hillbillies to the curb. They were going to do it their way, and we had to wait for an opening. And when we got the opening to be on CNN, my phone, I actually started getting my phone calls returned, because I had figured out that we just had to go lick for lick with them on the PR side of it.
Right.
So early on, the sensationalism really hurt us.
Yeah.
But later on, I think they were very fair when they started seeing and covering the human side of it, the human element. They were compassionate, and I think they really helped us.
Okay. Well, we're going to be right back. We want to hear more with Mayor Kennon, and we're going to find out. It's been a 2-year anniversary now, so we want to find out where we're at. More with Mayor Kennon next. Stay with us. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you. You know, there's one thing I'm dying to know is about Feinberg. I know from the footage that I saw, he was promising to come in here and take control and really get things going and straighten things out. You were here firsthand. How did that play out?
It was difficult. Myself and Robert Kraft, the mayor of Gulf Shores, met with Ken Feinberg about 3 weeks before he actually took over the claims process. And in that meeting, he made two statements that I'll never forget, you know. One was that, Mayor, bad things happen to good people. And the other was that I had been arguing the fact that BP continued to proclaim they were going to make us whole. And he said, there's not enough money in the whole world to make you whole. And that just went all over me because, you know, here BP had this $300 million PR campaign telling the country that they were doing what they were supposed to do by making us whole financially. Right. And then here's their agent, their surrogate, telling us that's not going to happen. So it sort of went downhill from there, I can tell you. It was a very slow process. He said when he took over, he would have individuals taken care of in 48 hours, businesses in 7 days. We told him that was an absolute pipe dream. He would never, first off, he wouldn't have the information from BP. It'd taken 3 months to get all of that because we had such nightmares with British Petroleum losing the information and constantly requesting resubmittal of information. So I think he stepped off into something he wished he hadn't have.
Right. And we mentioned earlier a little bit about the PR. You know, at the time I was looking at the area to come here and I saw a bunch of pretty negative stuff about the area and you know, it was kind of a decision for us to kind of wait to come here. And I interviewed personally just recently a gal that probably 10, 15 miles from here that ran a business close to the water. And the Today Show even came down and interviewed her, and they were wanting her to talk about the oil spill. And at that time, oil hadn't even shown up on the beach yet. And they were wanting her to tell about how it was devastating everything and how everybody was losing all this revenue. And she says, well, it hasn't happened yet. Nothing's, and they were saying, talk about it anyways. And if there's anything, you know, really positive, you know, be careful. Yeah,
well, early on, it was necessary that they sensationalize it because there was just nothing going on.
Sure.
And I understand now how the media works. It's all about the money. It's all about the dollars and ratings, and I understand that.
Sure.
But it was really, it was good that once we made a connection with them as people, and we could show them what was actually happening. Again, from the human element, they reported objectively, but they were really would really dig into what was going on, which was helpful and validated our concerns and positions.
Let's talk a little bit about the technique of the cleanup. I mean, I can't imagine at that time what I know it said that it was just black. What'd they do as far as method to clean this up? I know everybody was down here talking about different ways they could clean it up. You had celebrities coming down here saying, I got the solution. What was the process of cleanup like? Well,
first off, BP was complete control of the cleanup. We had absolutely, initially, no input into it whatsoever. I tell folks, we weren't at the table. We weren't even at the children's table. We were just completely ignored. And come to find out, we're essentially the only ones in town who have ever been on the beach to clean up a beach. They brought all these contractors in from Alaska and the Northeast and everywhere. They were experts, and we found out real quick they didn't have a clue what they were doing. They were winging it from day one. So in the long run, they ended up incorporating the majority of things that we brought to the table to help clean the beach up. They brought in a contractor that we had asked them to bring in several weeks ahead that they said they would never use, but through a little manipulation and media bashing, we got our contractor on the beach. We got the beach cleaned up. We literally took the top 4 feet of sand up, cleaned it, and put it back on the entire beach from city limit to city limit. So you learned actually how to get involved with media and figure out a way to use it to your advantage. Without the media, like I said, they wouldn't return my phone calls. Yeah. But we learned early on that the mantra was it's a cover up, not a clean up. And we started using that, and it made a difference because they were very sensitive to how the rest of the country perceived them as it related to cleanup. So I literally took my old John Deere tractor we got here at the city and put a 12-inch auger on the back of it, and we dug 10,000 holes in the beach right behind them, 4 feet deep, and looked for oil in every single hole. And I told them I was going to do that. And I don't know if they took me serious or not, but every day they saw that little John Deere tractor and 2 employees out there following them right down the beach.
Yeah.
I'm dead 10,000 holes later.
Wow.
We know we have a clean beach.
Wow.
But it was a fight to get them. They wanted to give us what I call the nickel plan on cleaning our beaches, and we threatened to arrest them if they brought their contractors out there. Now, I couldn't arrest anybody because it was a federal response, and if I tried to arrest anybody, I would have gotten arrested. But I think they thought I was crazy enough to try, and they didn't want me on TV going to jail, I guess, is what it was. So we ended up with our contractor and the $1.25 plan, and we got the beaches clean like they were supposed to be cleaned.
So it's been, I can hardly even believe it, but it's been 2 years, and where do you think things are at? Not just with the beaches, but with tourism. I know there was an estimated billions of dollars lost in revenue. Where do we feel like we're at now?
Well, we're bouncing back in a very strong way, and I like to tell folks that everybody in the country knows Alabama has beautiful beaches and paved roads now.
Yeah.
So we've got folks coming from all over the country that had no idea we had the beautiful white sandy beaches. So I believe there are silver linings here, and we're going to grab them and take advantage of every silver lining we possibly can. The media campaign that BP is running now is still is helping us. They're doing it for their own reputation rehabilitation, but we are a benefactor of that PR program.
So tell me right now, if people feel like their damage was, or their business was damaged, what can they do right now as far as claims? I know there was been a lot of red tape, but it seems like things are kind of moving forward now.
Well, it's very complicated, and I think, to be quite honest with you, I think this is still in the winging stage as well. But the Plaintiff Steering Committee, which is a group of attorneys in New Orleans representing the classes of claimants, has come to some type of settlement agreement with BP, but that is still in the behind door stage of ironing out the details. So we're hopefully going to know something in 30 days or so. The GCCF, which is Feinberg's operation, is no longer in play.
Right.
Everyone that took a settlement and signed away their right, they've lost. They've lost out. They don't get to go back, and I hate that because a lot of them took that settlement knowing it was not a good deal, but because it had drug on for so long and they didn't seem to be getting anywhere, they took what bones were thrown to them.
Right.
But there's still well over 250,000 claims, if I'm not mistaken, out there that will come through this new process. This is supposed to be much more transparent. The formula is going to be public and much easier. You plug the numbers in, you know what you get, you take it, or you go to court. So I'm hoping this takes a lot of the angst and anxiety away from those who are still in the claims process.
Right. Now, don't go anywhere. Stick with us for a minute. I want to talk about your new book coming out this fall. It's pretty interesting. There's a lot of stuff in there when we talked a little bit about it, stuff that people may not know about. Yeah. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Mayor Kennon. Okay, before the break, we were talking with Mayor Kennon here, and I want to get into your book because I think it's an amazing title. I think it's going to be a must-read of everybody that not only lives in the Gulf Coast, but everybody in some way that was affected by the oil spill. But I really want to make the point, I don't think people realize in the Gulf Coast here how badly businesses were affected, you know. I know that talk a little bit about the frame of mind of what's going on in this area during the oil spill. In fact, I read that even somebody even committed suicide because they were affected that deeply. Tell us a little bit about that.
All right, let me back up and paint you a picture. Our business community is 95% local. We don't have these huge chains that have pockets of cash sitting somewhere else that they could draw for. In 2004, we had Hurricane Ivan. 2005, we had Katrina. 2006, 2007, you had the building bubble burst. 2008, you had the banking crisis. Then you had 2 years of recession. Our folks were essentially strapped. They had no cash available. They were hanging on by their fingertips. 2010, first quarter, man, the light shining, reservations are up, things are fixing to do very well.
This is our year.
This is it. You know, everybody spends their last bit of cash on marketing and inventory, and then at the very worst time possible, April 20th, 6 weeks or so before Memorial Day, our legs are cut out from us, from under us by the oil spill. So you have no cash, and you lose at least 50% of your revenues, because see, 70-80% of all revenues for our folks are made between Memorial Day and the middle of August. So they've lost 50% of the revenues for the year. There's no way they're going to survive the winter. And then Alan Cruz, my buddy, the rookie, took his own life because, I mean, it just got to the point that the stress of not knowing was too much. And I think
then the family's compounding on that, saying, honey, when are things going to, just unbelievable.
Yeah, you can't imagine, domestic violence went up, stress, anxiety within the families went up, husbands having to leave to go find work outside of town, people packing up and moving. They were in my office almost on a daily basis to say goodbye or to ask me if I had any last-ditch effort or thought that might help them survive and make it through the summer. So it was, unless you were here, you just have no idea.
Tell us a little bit about your book. I know the title of your book is called 10,000 Holes. You alluded briefly about, standing your ground and saying, if you don't stop what you're doing, I'm going to drill, every 10,000 holes in this beach, and you actually started doing it. But tell us a little bit about the book and what you hope to.
Well, the book is about a story about our community and how we were affected and how we responded, and then hopefully how we blossom and carry all of that. I tell folks this was the greatest experience ever in the worst of times, and I want everyone to understand what the story was and how we blossomed out of this. And there's silver linings, and we're going to find a way to make it happen and take advantage of it. But I just think it's a story that needs to be told. And from behind the scenes, being involved in a lot of behind-the-door meetings and the fights, the battles that we had to fight to get British Petroleum to do the right thing. I'm still aggravated. They've spent $400 million probably now on a PR campaign to convince the world that they're a loving, benevolent, caring, giving corporation, and unfortunately that's not the way it is.
Right.
They're about making dollars and protecting shareholders.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, it's been such a privilege having you today, and we're comfortable having you in charge of things. Come back, would you?
Thank you, I will.
We really
Anytime.
appreciate that. And one thing I wanted to talk about, I think Henry Ford said that whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And that's really what we saw here with the oil spill. Many people, even now, are still thinking, I'm not going to do the business I used to do. It's really affecting my business. And if you think that way, then it is going to affect your business. But we're here talking to people every day on the Gulf Coast that are having record-breaking years, not only in their business they were doing, but the tourism is up. Things are great here, and we can't let that fear really affect us. I think one point that I really want to make is when things get tough for your business, regardless if there's an oil spill, a hurricane, or anything else, we have to separate our strategy from our vision. That's really difficult to do. Let me give you an example. Coca-Cola is a great company in my opinion, and years ago Coca-Cola actually had a real hit. They said we need really a big thing for our revenue. We got to take our revenue to a height we've never done, and they released Diet Coke, and it was a huge, huge home run for Coca-Cola. And years later, they said, we got to think of something else to get us back to those revenues that Diet Coke brought us to. And they hired a really great marketing specialist from the Orient. They brought this guy in, and they said, he's saying, this is the guy with the Midas touch. He's going to give it to us. He builds this huge vision of how to get Coca-Cola's revenue to these new heights. And the campaign was New Coke. And I don't know if you remember that, Mr. Mayor, what happened with New Coke, but in 76 days, there was over 1 million complaints. People hated New Coke, and they demanded to pull it off the market. And of course, Coca-Cola let their superstar go. But I thought was interesting is, days passed, and the man started thinking about it, and he says, I think I understand what was wrong. And he calls Coca-Cola back, and he says, I just figured out a way to bring Coca-Cola past the vision that we even said, past the revenue marks that I even promised, and I'm not campaigning to get my job back, but if you listen to me, I can tell you how to fix this whole thing and bring Coca-Cola to a new height. And what the strategy was, he said, was we never knew what loyal followers we had with Coca-Cola until we took it away. So he says, what I want to do is I want to act like we're getting America involved, and I want them to fight for their way. So we're going to do new Coca-Cola versus classic Coke. And we're going to get people involved to vote which one they want and get America involved. And then eventually we can actually go to competitors and actually have them taste test against other competitors. And the result was millions of people got involved. They campaigned for Classic Coke, and his plan worked, and it brought Coca-Cola to a new all-time record-breaking year. And what I thought was classy about Coca-Cola is they hired the gentleman back. And you know, when asked why everything you do always works, how come you had that one failure? What I thought was interesting about his answer is he says, I didn't fail. See, I had the right vision of where I wanted to take Coca-Cola, but my strategy was terrible, right? And so when you have a great vision, most of us have great visions at one point or another. I'm sure when you saw the oil, you had this great vision of what needed to take place, and you just kind of bulldogged your way until it happened. And many of us as entrepreneurs, we have great vision. We have these incredible ideas that we know that we could have amazing success. And then we start on our strategy, and then all of a sudden we get hit again, and we get knocked down, and we say, is this still going to work? But I think we can really take a lesson from what happened here in the Gulf Coast and happened with Coca-Cola is when we have great vision, that's the vision. You lock it down and say, this is what I will settle for, nothing less. And then when we start getting out there, we start drilling holes in the beach, and we start pounding our way forward, and we take some nosebleeds, and we get knocked on our butt. Don't second guess your vision. Don't second guess what you want to get accomplished. Just say, you know what, I have the right vision, my strategy sucks. I need a new strategy. I got to get the media involved. Change your strategy, constantly refine, tweak, and move until the vision's accomplished. Mr. Mayor, it's been such a pleasure having you. Come back, would you?
Absolutely.
We'd love to have you.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much, everybody. Remember, that's our show. Remember to get involved in your local community and be forgiving of others. Good night, everybody.